All right. So we spoke about this important result, which is if there is a linear transformation from a finite dimensional vector space to another vector space, right? Then the transformation is injective or one-to-one if and only if the null of the transformation contains only the zero vector. Okay, and the implication of this particular result is straight away when you are solving a system of homogeneous equations, and what you would really care are the non-trivial solutions. So turns out if the null of t is not equal to 0, right? If the null of t is not equal to 0, or the dimension of null of t is not equal to 0, then we do have non-trivial solutions to a system of homogeneous equations. Okay, all right. This is where we finished. So we will extend this, and we'll have other results. Okay, and so we'll just note this down once again. Okay, just for a ready reference. Okay. Okay, all right. So this is important, and in this context, let's also recall the rank nullity theorem again. Okay, all right. Remember, we are yet to prove this. We will, but we need to talk about the implications first, right? So there is a linear transformation from V to W at the dimension of V is finite. Then the dimension of V is nothing but the dimension of the null of T plus the dimension of the range of T. Okay, we know that this is called the nullity, and this is nothing but the rank of the matrix induced by the linear transformation. Okay, you all have computed ranks of matrices in a previous mathematics classes, right? And also a very important in terms of square matrices is that when your vector spaces V and W both are Rn, then N is equal to nullity of T plus rank of T. Okay. Okay. Now, what this also implies is that this particular result implies a lot of things actually. Okay. One of the things that it also implies is the following, that if dimension of V is greater than dimension of W, then there doesn't exist a linear map T such that T is injective. Okay, does this make sense? Does this particular result make sense? It directly comes from this particular, general vector space idea. Okay, so I mean, it's pretty much like this, guys. If you look at this, right? I mean, just take this. Okay, I mean, I'm assuming that this holds. I mean, even though I haven't shown that it indeed does, is that the nullity, right, or the dimension of null of T. The dimension of null of T is nothing but dimension of V minus dimension of the range of T, or the rank, right? Okay. Now, if the dimension of V is greater than the dimension of W, right? If the dimension of V is strictly greater than the dimension of W, what can we say about this right-hand side? Anyone?
Greater than 0.
Why?
The dimension range of dimension of range of T is dimension of W. So
no. I mean, range of T is a subspace of W, right? So dimension of range of T would be less than or equal to dimension of range of dimension of W.
Right.
Correct?
Sorry.
Right. Okay. So B. I mean, we can't be really talking loose about these things. Okay. All right. So therefore, I mean, this has to be greater than 0. Very good. So now this implies that the nullity of T is greater than 0 strictly.
Now, how did we say it's greater than 0? Because range of T ka dimension can be less than W also, right?
So there is a minus sign, right?
No, I'm sorry, I got confused there.
So the
yeah.
dimension of range of T is less than the dimension of W, right? Because range of T is a subspace of W.
Right, but then you have a minus sign, right?
Yeah. Okay, so the dimension of V and W is same. So
greater than dimension of V is greater than dimension of W. So dimension of V has to be greater than dimension of range of T, right? Because dimension of range of T is less than equal to dimension of W.
Yeah.
Right? It's a very simple inequality. Okay, so that means nullity is greater than 0. Okay, great. Now, so if nullity is greater than 0, that implies that nullity is not equal to 0, right? And so therefore, what does this imply? If nullity is not equal to 0, we already have proved a result, right? That in order that your transformation is 1-to-1, you must have the null of T is a 0 vector, right? But since here nullity is not equal to 0, therefore T cannot be 1-to-1. Okay, all right. And and therefore, once again, this particular result implies that we could have non-trivial solutions to the system of equations Tx equal to 0. Okay, this rank nullity is very, very important. I mean, because it actually helps us understand a lot of things. Okay, which actually the danger of I mean, I told you before this, I don't like the way most linear algebra classes or the way the introduction to linear algebra is done to undergrads, right? Because it just assumes certain dangerous things, right? It teaches you that you start by assuming that the determinant of A minus lambda is equal to 0 without actually trying to figure out why that is the case. I mean, or where does it come from? Okay, so the next question that we are going to look at, okay, is that why such characteristic equation makes sense. Because what you have done before, even coming to class, is that you were given matrices, you computed A minus lambda I, took the determinant, set it equal to 0, you got a characteristic equation, sometimes square, sometimes cubic, whatever, who cares, right? You solve it, find the eigenvalues. And then you go back and plug in those eigenvalues and solve the same equation, you get the eigenvectors. I mean, so what? I mean, why would you do that? Right? I mean, why would someone do that? Based on what? Based on what principle are you setting that characteristic polynomial equal to 0? That's the next question that we need to answer. And the answer to that question depends on the concepts that we have learned from rank nullity theorem and its paraphernalia. All right. So let me save this first. So let me call this the recall class. Recall class. So that was 4, I think. So today is 5. All right. Okay. So the next question that we are going to ask ourselves is the following. That why is what do you think?
By definition of eigenvectors are those on which if you apply the transform, they just get scaled. That is, the
Okay.
linear transformation on that vector is basically does not change its direction, but only acts as if it's multiplied by a scalar. So from there we can say that if A is the required matrix for which we need to find the eigenvectors and eigenvalues, so A into V.
Okay. Okay. I will begin. Hold on. I'll begin with what you are telling me. Okay. So I'll just take your cue. Okay. All right. So we know this, right? I'm just writing what you are telling me. Okay. So we know that. So this A is T. Okay. Just there is not much of a difference here. Okay. And so I would rather prefer writing this as T. So we know that TV equal to lambda V, right? And by virtue of this particular equality, we can say that we are actually stretching or shrinking vectors without changing their orientation or direction, so that the basis vectors do not fall off the span of the linear transformation, right? I mean, this is what you have been trying to tell me, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So go ahead. Yeah. Okay, fine. Okay, go ahead.
So now we can pretty much, I mean, end of the proof, right now only we can just subtract lambda V from both sides. Pre-multiplication of T minus lambda is a common factor. I mean, V is the common post multiple, so T minus lambda into V equal to 0 vector.
Once again, I follow you. Okay, this is what you want me to write, right?
Zero vector. Zero vector.
Okay, it's okay. I mean, this is the characteristic equation, right? So it has to be a 0 on the right hand side.
And I mean, since V is not 0, that
since V
forces
is not 0,
that forces that T minus lambda be that.
Okay,
Zero.
so this is also makes sense because what we want is we actually want non-trivial eigenvectors, right? So that is, so it's basically what we are interested in is we are interested in non-trivial eigenvectors, right? We are not interested in zero eigenvectors. So we are interested in non-trivial eigenvectors. Very good. All right. But I mean, so V is not equal to 0. So T minus lambda I equal to 0. That's what you were telling me, right?
Yes.
One minute. So T minus lambda. So that means that T minus lambda I is a zero matrix each and every time. Right?
I guess, yes.
Is that what you get when you solve these eigenvalue eigenvector equations in the previous classes?
No. Okay, so yeah, we don't get zero vector,
Right.
but determinant will
No,
be
it's
zero.
zero matrix. This is a matrix. Okay, all right. This is a matrix. Okay, this is a matrix. Yeah.
Excuse me, sir. Actually, we not only want a non-trivial solution. We also notice that if v vector satisfies that relation, some constant c into v vector will also satisfy that solution. So
Yes.
we'll actually have infinite solutions, and for infinite solutions to be present for a linear equation, for a set of linear equation, the matrix of that equation, like coefficient matrix of that equation, should have a zero determinant if we want infinite solutions.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. You are on the right path. But I mean, if I see that you are getting it right. But I mean, how do we argue more convincingly? So far so good, right? But I mean, if I just assume that V is not equal to 0, and therefore I say that T minus lambda I equal to 0, that means I'm saying that the matrix itself is a zero matrix, right? And therefore the determinant of any zero matrix is 0. So that's sort of a trivial realization, right? But this could be a non-zero matrix as well, isn't it?
Yeah, but that is because if some matrix X into vector Y is 0, then that
Yeah.
implies determinant of X or the determinant or the magnitude of Y must be 0.
No, but
For
you are actually assuming what you are supposed to prove, right? Okay, I mean, you have done enough.
Excuse me, sir. Should we be using the inverse of T minus lambda I here? Is that the way to proceed with the proof?
No. I haven't. Have I spoken about inverses yet in this class? Not yet, right? So no. Okay. So I'm not going to use the idea that the inverse of a matrix exists, therefore the determinant has to be non-singular, right? I haven't used it anywhere. I actually do not like that approach. If you recall, in the first class, I said that I don't like taking the determinant of matrices. I also don't like taking the inverses of matrices because both are expensive operations, right? So let's say that this matrix T minus lambda I is okay, also a non-zero matrix. Okay, all right. Now, I mean, we have to argue. So therefore, what we have here is this. What we have here is this, that we have a non-trivial matrix V multiplied with a non-trivial vector V, and that product is 0. Okay, all right. Now, from the rank nullity theorem, what do we know? From the rank nullity theorem, what do we know from the rank nullity theorem? I mean, your matrix B, when does, okay, let me complete my question. When does your matrix B have to be a full rank matrix?
When nullity is 0.
Right. Now, from BV equal to 0, can we say that V belongs to the null space of B? This is the definition of null space, right? Any doubt? Recall the definition of null space, right? Okay. Also, please notice that we have strictly assumed that these vectors or these eigenvectors are non-trivial or non-zero vectors, right? So therefore, your null of T or null of B is not equal to the zero vector, right? Okay, isn't it? So from the rank nullity theorem, we know that the columns of B are linearly independent if and only if the null is zero, isn't it? Do you see that? Okay, let me write the rank nullity theorem again. I think you are. So from the rank nullity theorem for matrices, right, we know that n equal to dimension of null of T or nullity of nullity of T plus rank of T. So we are talking about an n by n matrix here, because otherwise anyway you cannot compute the. So if your matrix of the linear transformation is full rank meaning the rank is n, right? If your matrix of the corresponding linear transformation is a full rank matrix, what does it mean? That the columns of such a matrix have to be linearly independent of each other. Otherwise, the matrix cannot be full rank. If one of the columns is dependent on any of the other columns, the rank reduces by 1. If two of the columns become dependent on other columns, then the rank reduces by 2. If all the columns of the matrix are linearly independent, that means it's a full rank matrix. So if it's a full rank matrix, the value of rank of T is n. You have n on the left-hand side. And what that implies is that the nullity is 0. So that means your nullity, the null space, dimension of the null space of the matrix will be 0 when you have a full rank matrix. When do you have a full rank matrix? When the columns of the T are linearly independent, right? So in this case, since the null is not 0, then that means that the columns of B are not linearly independent, right? So when the columns of a matrix are not linearly independent and you take the determinant of that matrix, what do you get? Hello?
0.
Yes, 0. And therefore, okay, all right. So this is the reason for a linear transformation, and with a non-trivial set of eigenvectors, your characteristic polynomial has to be set equal to 0 by virtue of this operator determinant. At this point of time, I would also like to tell you that determinant is nothing but a linear operator. Okay, all right. But we will talk about determinants at the very end, not now.
Sir?
Okay. Yes.
One question. During this proof, we assume that, let's say we have a non-zero eigenvector, then this all will follow.
Yes.
So on what basis? We want a non-zero eigenvector, agreed. But
yes, of course.
Right.
Because otherwise, what's the point, right?
Right. Agreed.
No.
How are we certain that you get a non-zero eigenvector? And
no, you are not certain. You are not certain. But your goal is to obtain non-zero eigenvectors. Otherwise, there is no point in finding. See, there is no point in finding trivial eigenvalues and trivial eigenvectors, because any characteristic equation AV equal to lambda V, if you look at the characteristic equation TV equal to lambda V, we know that if I plug in V is equal to 0 and both sides, the equation holds, right? So we are not interested in such solutions. So we are always interested in non-trivial solutions. So the same idea is translated to when you solve system of equations. When you have T of X equal to 0, you know that the solutions are, the one solution that you always get is X is equal to 0. Who cares? What you care is the non-trivial solutions, right? What you want to know is for what non-zero values of X is your system of equations Tx equal to 0 will have a solution. Okay, right?
In this, if say we don't have a non-zero eigenvector, is it possible for a given?
Well, yes. It could be. If your eigenvalues are all 0, your corresponding eigenvectors will also be all 0, right? Then you are not looking at anything like you will not be able to scale it.
Right. So
Then
this
such operations are not possible.
right, because we assumed that we have non-zero eigenvectors, and then
Yeah,
this,
then you are talking about the zero transformation, right? So then your transformation is actually not doing anything, right? Okay. But you are once again not interested in such transformations because you're interested in transformations such as reflection, rotation, translation, and things like that, right? Okay. All right. Okay. So with this, I think I don't remember. Someone asked a question last class, and that was sort of in the context of inner products. So I'll just a flashback, and I should have answered that question in the last class itself, but I don't know why I didn't. So I don't know who asked, but it's okay. So this was just in the context of inner products, because the next thing that we are going to talk about, since we spoke about eigenvalues and eigenvectors here via a characteristic polynomial via rank nullity theorem, we are going to talk about an interesting result here. But before that, I think what I did yesterday in the last class is that I wrote a property of an inner product, and I said that, sorry, this holds. And some of you were not able to see how that is true, right? Well, the general definition of any inner product is this, that you should be able to write it by definition in the following manner, right? And therefore, by the property of transposes, should be 1 minute, right. So we opened up everything. Now it's time to go back to inner products, right? So when you go back to inner products, this is going to be this, right? Okay. So that was something that I needed to talk about. Okay. So once again, so let me just write down this property. This I mentioned many times while talking about both principal component analysis and singular value decomposition, is that if I have a linear transformation, right, from V to V, since we are talking about eigenvalues, right, and the lambdas are real and distinct, we know that the corresponding eigenvectors are orthogonal. We have shown this, right? What we didn't show is the following, that a set of orthogonal vectors, and these are not just eigenvectors, it could be a set of any orthogonal vectors, is linearly independent. Okay, all right. So let me save this first. I'm hoping these file names that I'm using, right? I mean, so that when you go back to all those whiteboards, right, whiteboard snapshots, I mean, you would be able to figure out what is what. So I'm just trying my best to name the files accordingly. Okay. If you want me to name it like something else, let me know. Okay. All right. So here is the deal. Let me use a different color. So I have a set of vectors, okay? And these are orthogonal, pairwise, right? Which means that if you take the inner product of these guys, right, you are going to get something like this. or rather I will, I won't write otherwise. I'll just. This is what I know about. This is what we know about orthogonality. Okay. Now I have to show, just need to show that these guys are linearly independent as well. Well, how do I show that a set of vectors is linearly independent? Can you recall?
Assume coefficients and then sum the vectors and equate the equation to 0, and then prove that all the coefficients must be 0 for this to hold.
Okay, so a linear combination of, so I cook up a linear combination of all these vectors, right? Basically a spanning set, set it equal to 0, right? And that equation must make sense if and only if all the coefficients are identically 0. Okay, all right. So why don't we just do this for 2 vectors? Okay, all right, just 2, and then you can easily scale up.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Could you repeat the question once? We're trying to prove if the vectors are if there is a set of vectors are orthogonal, then they're linearly
independent. Right.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So I'll just take two vectors. Okay, I'll just take 2 vectors, v1 and v2. All right. So, and they are orthogonal, which means that v1 inner product v2 must be equal to 0, right? And v1 inner product v1 is 1, and v2 inner product v2 is also 1. Okay. Now I assume this, that c1 v1 plus c2 v2 equal to 0. Okay, where c1 and c2 are scalars. All right, c1 and c2 are drawn from the set of real numbers. All right, and what I need to show is the following, that c1 and c2 both are 0. How do I do that? Okay, now let's invoke the properties of inner products. Okay, now I can do this, right? I can just take a vector from the set v1 and take the inner product of that vector with this bunch, right, on the left, and therefore I can do it on the right as well, because I know 0 is nothing but an inner product of v1 with 0. A non-zero vector inner product with a 0 vector will give you 0, right? Okay. Now, so this is nothing but 0, right? And what is this? I mean, by virtue of the distributive property of inner products, I can write it in the following sense: c1 v1 v1 plus c2 v1 v2, and that is 0, isn't it? Okay, now what is this? This is 1. What is this? v1 and v2 are orthogonal, right? So this must be equal to 0. Okay, so what I have here is c1 equal to 0. Now I know that your vectors are non-trivial, right? So go back and plug in c1 equal to 0 here. So this guy vanishes, right? And you have c2 v2 equal to 0. The only way this makes sense, because v2 is a non-zero vector, the only way this makes sense is that c2 also has to be 0. Okay, all right. And we can actually easily scale this up. I mean, you just, instead of v1 and v2 two vectors, you take this as, I mean, in general, the setting is, I'll not complete the proof for the scaling up thing, but I'll just write it in the following manner. Instead of v1, v1, and v2, you just do this. You take a vi, and then here you take a CIVI I equal to 1 to n, right? And on the right, you have a VI comma 0. And then you can actually scale this up and show that there is one coefficient which is 0, go back and you do this again and blah, blah. Okay? You can just change this accordingly. Okay? All right. Okay. So this is out of the way. Very good. Excellent. What's next? Right. I mean, there are some other things that I, in the context of eigenvalues, that I wanted to talk about. The thing is, because we also said that if I have a real symmetric matrix, right, the eigenvalues, I mean, the eigenvalues are, you know, distinct, then the corresponding eigenvectors are orthogonal to each other, right? But the question is, this distinct eigenvalues, whenever we get distinct eigenvalues of a transformation, right, it actually throws a lot of opportunities to us. Okay, one of the principal opportunities that it throws us is that if your linear transformation T endowed with dv equal to lambda v admits of distinct eigenvalues, then, I mean, one very nice thing is you can diagonalize T. T is diagonalizable. What this implies is that you should be able to write T in the following manner. There is another matrix T star inverse D. Okay, all right. Where D is nothing but a diagonal matrix. And what does this diagonal matrix contain? This diagonal matrix contains the eigenvalues of T. Okay, and if you recall, I have shown that this has also other lots of beautiful implications, particularly when you actually solve a system of differential equations. When you convert your system of differential equations to a system of linear equations and invoke matrix algebra to solve such systems, right? Then you actually use this kind of stuff. Okay, all right. Other than the fact that you exponentiate a matrix, which I already have shown you an example in the second lecture. Okay, all right. There is also one other thing called similarity transformation that I would just like to mention here. Is that two matrices or two linear transformations B and A will be called similar if there always exists a non-invertible matrix P this way. Okay, all right. And now these matrices could be any matrices, right? I mean, just square matrices. It doesn't have to have, you know, real and symmetric real and distinct eigenvalues. These matrices don't have to be symmetric and all. But a very nice interpretation is that two matrices can be similar if there exists such a relationship between the two. Okay, I mean, it's not a guarantee that such relationships exist, but whenever that exists, we actually get something as a conformal mapping. Okay. Conformal transformation. In your previous math classes, have you come across this conformal? No? Yes or no?
No, sir.
No. I mean, so yeah, you haven't been taught complex variables?
Not in context of linear algebra. They were
No, forget the context of linear algebra. In complex variables, there is a conformal mapping that is defined all the time. W is equal to T of Z. I mean, it's just a mapping from real numbers to complex numbers. You haven't been taught about that?
No, sir. I don't think.
No.
If you do, I don't remember.
I mean, who taught the math course? The math instructor, the department, a faculty from the math department, is it?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay. I don't want to know the name. I'm just asking. So, I mean, see, this conformal transformation is nothing but angle preserving transformation. So, if you have two linear transformations B and A in this case, and if such a relation exists, then without actually computing the actual angle between them, you can straight away say that these two transformations preserve angle. Okay, I mean, which is actually a beautiful thing. Okay, all right. So anyway,
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Just one slide out. There's no special properties of B and A here, right? They're just
No. Just square. Which is why such a similarity transformation equivalence is not guaranteed. I mean, you will get it sometimes. Okay. I mean, the key is to find an invertible matrix P, and there is no theoretical basis of guaranteeing that such an inverse exists always. Okay. All right. Of course, what you have to have is B and A both are full rank matrices. Okay. All right.
So if we are given B and A, can we check if there exists P, or is it not computable? It is computable.
You have to check. Yeah. You have to check if there exists a non-invertible P. I mean, okay. So it turns out that if the transformations are angle preserving, then such an equivalence exists. Okay, so you can either approach this problem from the geometry side or from the linear algebra side. Okay, all right. So what I should name
the transformation is conformal. Yeah. Which transformation matrix are we talking about here?
B and A.
Both.
Yeah. They are conformal to each other.
Meaning the output of B and the output of A have the same angle.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Let me. What do I use this? Okay. Okay. Now back to all of this, we have to actually we haven't actually really talked about the real implications of the rank nullity theorem, and I mean we really need to convince ourselves that the rank nullity theorem indeed holds true, right? Before we actually go ahead and prove such a theorem. Okay. So once again, do you want me to write the rank nullity theorem again? Let me write. It's okay. Right. So.
Sir, all these results that we are proving, are they to arrive at some are you trying to get at some bigger final result, or these are just tools we'll be using later?
Some of the results that I have proved, I immediately spelled out the consequences of those, no? Like for example, the consequences of rank nullity theorem, right? So the bigger picture of a rank nullity theorem is to be able to find non-trivial solutions to systems of homogeneous equations. One big picture I have already seen of the consequence of rank nullity theorem is that there exist non-trivial eigenvalues to the characteristic equation, and that you use the determinant to find those eigenvalues, right?
Right.
If you are asking questions from a machine learning perspective, are you asking questions from a machine learning perspective?
No.
No.
It's just the math of it. I'm just trying to get where are we finally wanting to reach at, sort of.
So I mean, let me ask you a question. I mean, what I have been spelling out are actually implications or sort of larger pictures, right? I mean, are you getting that, or?
Yes.
Yes.
That
Okay. Now, if I ask you a question correctly, you would want to see if there is a very large landscape of all of these results, isn't it?
Right.
Yes, yes, that will be clear. Just have some patience, okay? All right.
Sure, sir.
I mean,
Sure.
because these are also, you are right. These are tools. I mean, some of these are actually tools to achieve some small tasks, right? But when you look at these together, they actually, I mean, for example, okay, since you are interested in the bigger picture, there is this thing known as spectral decomposition. Okay, all right. Now, when you are solving a singular value decomposition problem, that is exactly what you are doing, right? So, what exactly have we solved in a singular value decomposition problem? The singular value decomposition problem was like, I mean, if I give you some data metrics, like for example, Netflix user ratings and movies and genres, right? The key extraction, what you solved out of that problem is that which genres are more popular compared to the other genres, right? So that when you do a clustering kind of a thing, if you see that there are users which are grouped in the same cluster, right? And then a majority of that user cluster is liking a sci-fi genre, then what Netflix does is that Netflix is actually recommending that sci-fi, some of the movies from that sci-fi genre to the other group of people who are yet to subscribe or who are yet to watch any of those sci-fi genres, right? This is a business logic.
Right.
The reason this business logic has evolved is because you have been able to decompose your metrics into U, sigma, V transpose, right?
Right.
And how did you get those U, sigma, V transpose? What is sigma? Sigmas are singular values, right? The elements of sigmas are singular values. Where the singular values come from? The singular values are nothing but the square root of the eigenvalues. Where do the eigenvalues come from? Eigenvalues come from linear transformations and metric spaces and rank nullity theorem.
Right,
Okay.
right. Sir, I get that. I get that there are implications in data science. That was a very interesting example. But what I was trying to ask is that, so far what we have done is we have covered some part of vector spaces, some part of inner products and linear transformation. What all topics exactly would we be covering, and what would be the sequence of those topics?
Okay, that's a good question. See, this is by design. Let me tell you, I haven't really taught this way ever before. I always took a very math way of teaching things. Okay, so actually, to answer your question, we will actually be talking about these things throughout the course. Okay, so we will be talking about these things will come back and forth and back and forth. So what am I doing is I am selectively picking keywords from the first 3 chapters of Sheldon Axler's Linear Algebra Done Right, which is your reference book, right?
Right.
I mean, if you read that book, you will see that the way he talked about things, because he had written the book for math majors. You guys are not math majors, right? So I wanted
I
to
am a
give
math
you,
major.
yeah. Oh, you are a math major. Oh, I see. I didn't
Yes.
know that math majors are there in my class. Anyway, but I mean, you're at dual degree, right? Or you're
Yes.
just a math? Okay,
Dual
right.
degree.
So I mean, when I'm teaching the class, I'm offering the class to computer science majors, right? I mean, if some of the computer science majors have a dual degree in math, I don't mind, right? But since this is a computer science course, I mean, my focus was to drive things from an application side. That is why I started from PCA and SVD. And we will be going back to PCA and SVD again. And some of the other applications like least square problems and things like that. So in order to answer your question, I mean, we will be talking about these things throughout the course, but in a very loosely coupled structure.
Okay, sir. Okay, I get it now.
Okay, all right. Okay. So now what I have is this, right? And then in the context of matrices, I mean, what this implies is n equal to n of t plus rank of t. Okay, if your v and w both are finite and equal to n. Okay, all right. And this has actually opened a lot of doors for us. But I mean, if we have to see, I mean, by just from an example, I mean, whether this makes sense or not. Okay, all right. So let's just see it before we actually go ahead and prove this stuff. Okay, let me find that example. Yes. Okay. So let me define a transformation from R4 to R4, right? And so this is, you can think of this as V and you can think of this as W, and you can see in this case, the dimension of V and dimension of W are both 4, right? Okay. And that is nothing but the value of N. Okay. So what we need to do is to see whether this particular equation is verified for a particular example of a linear transformation. So now what I am going to give you is that I'm going to give you a matrix which is induced by this linear transformation. Okay. All right. And this matrix is the following: 2, 1, -1, 3, 3, 2, -3, 2, 1, 0, 1, 4, 0, 1, -3, and 5. Okay. All right. Okay. So, I mean, as you can see, I mean, you can see clearly that the vector space R4 is spanned by these guys: 2, 1, -1, 3, 3, 2, -3, 4, 1, 0, 1, 4, and 0, 1, -3, and 4. Okay. All right. Now, in order to compute the nullity, we need to know the basis for the null of T and the basis for the range of T as well, right? Okay. So, in order to know the nullity of T, I need the basis for null of T, correct? And for rank, I need to know the basis for the range of T, correct? Because you know both null of T and range of T are subspaces of their corresponding vector spaces, and so therefore they are vector spaces in themselves, right? And every vector space, finite dimensional vector space, must have a basis, right? So I need to find the basis for the null of T, I need to find the basis of the range of T. I mean, if you simply find the rank of the linear transformation or the matrix, you would know the basis straight away, right? So how do you usually find the rank of a matrix? You have done this in a previous class. You basically do a bunch of stupid row transformations, right? I mean, I'm not going to do that, right? I mean, subtract one row from another, multiply some row with some multiple, subtract, blah, 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 right? I mean, assuming that I have done this correctly, okay, I actually arrive at this matrix. 3, I'll just copy this from my notes. 3, 1, 0, 7, 0, 1, -3, -5, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Okay, so this is nothing but the same matrix T of A under elementary row operations. You know that under elementary row operations, the structure of the matrix doesn't change in the sense that its inherent properties don't change. Okay, now so what is the rank of this matrix? 2, right? It's easy to see because it has only 2 linearly independent rows. Correct? Okay, so the rank of this matrix, I can straight away write the rank of this matrix or the linear transformation as 2. Okay, so all I need to do is to verify that the nullity or the dimension of the null space is also 2. In order to do that, I need to find the basis of the null space. Now, what is the definition of null space, guys? Recall that the definition of null space is that you have a set of all non-trivial vectors such that this is equal to 0, right? Okay, and so therefore we already have this T of A. This matrix you multiply with a column vector, right? And so therefore, if you do that, I mean, you are going to get this. I mean, let's assume that your column vector X the column vector x is nothing but x1, x2, x3, and x4, and this is not a zero vector, and so therefore you have the matrix. You multiply this matrix with the column vector. If you do that, you will get 3x1 plus x2 plus 7x4 equal to 0. You will also get x2 minus 3x3 minus 5x4 equal to 0. Okay, I mean, if you solve this, actually, I mean, I'm running out of the time, but I can come back to this example. But trust me, it's very easy. Just set x4 equal to k and x3 equal to something, right, arbitrarily. You'll be able to find the basis. Okay, so the solution can be expressed in this form: -1, 3, 1, 0 plus x4 times -1, 5, 0, 1. -1, 5, 0, and 1. I mean, it is easy to see that these two vectors actually will be a spanning subset of R4, right? Also, I mean, these two vectors are linearly independent, right? It's easy to see that these two vectors are linearly independent, and therefore these two vectors form the basis of null of T. These two vectors form the basis of null of T. Since the basis contains two vectors, the dimension of null of T is nothing but 2. So what do you see? You see that this is 2, this is 2, add, you will get 4, which is nothing but the dimension of the vector space. Okay, so just a quick example to show that this really holds. But the beauty of this result, rank nullity theorem, is not by verifying one example. We really have to see and understand why this works. Okay, all right. So that's it, guys. I'll just store these as a rank nullity example. Okay. All right, that's it. So by the way, before you guys leave, you probably have seen the notice, right? Your first quiz is on September 11th during the class hour. Okay, and it will be an open book test.
Any more details?
Yeah, the syllabus. Pardon me?
More details on the syllabus and time we will get.
Yeah, I'll post. Don't worry. I'll post. It will be vector spaces, subspaces, dimension, rank, nullity, linear transformations. Okay. Yeah. It's a test week, right? Your September 10th to September 20th is your test week, right? So during that week, we'll have a quiz. I mean, we are calling it a test, right? I'm calling it a quiz or whatever, right? Okay. All right. Yeah, I will post a detailed syllabus.